U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is heading to Beijing this weekend amid rising tension between the U.S. and China. Blinken's trip was originally scheduled for February, but it was canceled after the U.S. shot down a Chinese spy balloon flying over the U.S. Blinken will be the most senior U.S. official to visit China since President Biden took office in 2021. CBS News chief foreign affairs correspondent Margaret Brennan joins us now. Margaret, let's talk about the business aspect. That's the most important thing to China. The Microsoft founder, Bill Gates, has just met with the Chinese president. Does this sort of help set the table for the Secretary of State?
Well, it certainly makes clear what Xi Jinping's top priorities are here. Bill Gates, he said, was the very first American friend he's met with all year. He came out and warmly embraced him, really. And it gets to that top priority for China right now, which is, in many ways, the financial relationship with the U.S. and major businesses. China's economy is the second largest in the world. It is fast growing, but it is also having some stumbles right now. They just lowered interest rates again in order to try to stimulate some of these troubled industries. But it also has to do with governance. There are concerns that the competition with the West and the United States may cause China to be isolating itself. Some of the more strict authoritarian measures that Xi Jinping has taken and his gestures to business has also caused concern. So if maintaining economic stability is a top priority for him and his leadership, then embracing business is certainly a top priority. We don't know yet if Xi Jinping will meet with the Secretary of State, who is trying to address so many of these issues of tension, and the economic relationship is key. Technology also key. So for him to have met with Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, a leader in artificial intelligence as well, indicates that it's a priority for China.
So to take that a step further, is there a way for the Secretary of State to kind of thread that needle between the economic interests of China and our foreign policy interests?
They're so intertwined, and that's what makes this competition the U.S. is in so complicated, because there are sometimes competing interests. For the Secretary of State, his prime goal here is really just reopening lines of communication, particularly on the military front. As you know, our defense chiefs don't speak to each other right now. We've had a series of
near misses.
It's
a very dangerous thing, by the way.
Very dangerous thing. And so it's literally setting a floor under the relationship to say, hey, let's have some backup plans, because even in the worst days of the Cold War, those existed with the Soviet Union. But for the Secretary of State, there aren't a long list of deliverables that we expect to come out of this. That's how tense things are. The best we can hope for, or at least the State Department is indicating, are more meetings with the Treasury Secretary and with the Commerce Secretary to lean more into those things China does want to talk about. They're not as interested in discussing some of the tough issues Blinken will bring up on the human rights front.
Right. So it sounds like the administration's really trying to manage expectations on the lower end. So is it likely or possible that he'll raise the issue of Taiwan and any red lines for the U.S.?
Well, you know, some of the experts I've talked to expect China to raise this. As you know, there's an upcoming presidential election in Taiwan in the new year. This is something that is really raw for the government in Beijing. Some of the things that Secretary Blinken could discuss on this front are about some of the diplomatic gestures the United States may be taking around this. Remember, we had Taiwan's president recently visit out on the West Coast of the United States. That caused some backlash in Beijing. You had the Speaker of the House visit, Nancy Pelosi. That also added to tension. So some of those things, like the future travel by the current Speaker of the House, may come up in this conversation. But the Biden administration argues it's not negotiating these things, and its position is very clear that it will come to the defense in one form or the other of Taiwan, and that it will push back on provocations in the Taiwan Strait.
And I think it's important to note you're one of the few journalists who will be traveling with the Secretary of State on this trip. A key issue here is the spying. Right? There's the new reporting that China set up a spy base in Cuba, which gives them a significant foothold in the Caribbean upon which to track U.S. communications. Does he tackle it, and how would he tackle it?
Secretary Blinken acknowledged this earlier this week, confirming the reporting that the Wall Street Journal had put out there about this spy base in Cuba. Blinken said that for years they've known this. In 2019, this expansion happened of the existing facilities. He also indicated that that's not where it stops, that they have seen a growing interest on behalf of Beijing in expanding their intelligence and military reach. And having it as close to the United States as Cuba reminds a lot of people of those days of the Cold War. And we are in something that is almost more complicated in this day and age, as H.R. McMaster, the former National Security Advisor to President Trump, told me earlier today. And we'll have some of his insight on Face the Nation Sunday, because this expansion in America's backyard just shows that this isn't just a conflict in the Pacific.
And a final question. Do you feel that we're kind of on the rim here? We're really at a significant point in this conflict or dialogue with China?
Yes, it is really at this massive inflection point. President Xi and President Biden haven't spoken in quite some time. And the fact that this just beginning a conversation about having the military chiefs avoid having a military confrontation, that's where we are. This isn't about, trying to work on joint ventures. This is about avoiding war and trying to create a way to talk around it. But this is very quickly going from competition towards conflict, and that's what they're trying to manage down.
Margaret Brennan, thank you, and we'll look forward to an update after your trip.
Thank you.